Hey everybody, John Peterson from John Peterson Photo, and today I want to give you the experience of what it's like to come on a winter time workshop to Grand Teton National Park. I visited this park every year for the last 10 to 12 years, and especially in wintertime, love shooting in this park. There are very few tourists compared to other times of the year. You'll see a few other photographers. You might see some hunters, unfortunately, but for the most part, it is an uncrowded, pristine experience in the park. The weather can be variable when we visit in December, usually the first week of December. Sometimes clouds, sometimes bluebird sky. Temperatures can range from 40 degrees to, minus 10, minus 15, but with a few simple, right choices of clothing, this can be an amazing experience for you out in Grand Teton National Park. So check out my slideshow. This will give you an idea of a little bit of what we see and what some of the photographic possibilities can be during wintertime in the park. So check it out. If you have any questions, email me at john@johnpetersonphoto.com. Check out my website, johnpetersonphoto.com. So enjoy and email me if you have any questions about this, and I hope that you will consider joining me on this particular workshop in the winter. Thank you. Have a great day. All right, so here we go. This here's an image early morning down in Schwabacher Landing. Normally this area is closed during the winter, but we drove partway down and hiked the rest of the way. And we happened to run into Tom Mangelson down there and hung out with him for a while. But just a beautiful bluebird day on a morning that was probably 0 to minus 5 degrees. Things were cold there, but it's a dry cold. Yeah. Here we took off from Jackson one night and went up into the park to shoot at night, shoot some stars over the barns. The moon was out, so it wasn't a great nighttime shoot, but I was still able to get a different kind of quality shot of the barns. Of course, we'll see a lot of wildlife on these workshops. Moose sitting down in the grass hanging out. Near Jackson, there's a body of water with some great reeds in the background, and sometimes the tonality of the colors can be beautiful. But here also is where some trumpeter swans hang out. So we'll usually stop there a couple of times to shoot some swans. We can get some, sometimes some really artistic images of these birds. So really close, really easy place to shoot. One morning just after sunrise along Mormon Row, the sun had come up, but as you can see there's some clouds overhead, and just the blue of the sky and the gold of the brush with the structures off in the distance made for a really nice sort of desolate image in my opinion. But there's a lot of things to do during wintertime here. This particular winter there wasn't a lot of snow cover when we were there in early December. Drama. I shoot a lot of monochrome in the Tetons, and these mountains are so rugged and so beautiful that they just exude drama, and to have storm clouds overhead just added to that dramatic effect, and this was one that just screamed for monochrome for me. And so this has been one of my favorites out of the Tetons for a long, long time. Very classic shot. As we wind our way up and down the park, we'll stop at various locations. Here's one with a little creek running by that is sometimes nice to shoot some moving water. And these red bushes that are in the background really make a nice contrast. It's a real nice splash of color in a fairly sedate colored landscape. This is a shot up by Oxbow Bend, and we had driven by this numerous times, and I could look down from the road down into the water, or down into the riverbank, and see these channels that have been preserved in the snow, and I thought they would make a great abstract. So I stopped the cars and hiked down there into the muddy bog and shot this, and I've been really happy with it. I really like this as kind of an abstract shot. But there's a lot of different things to shoot when you visit the Tetons. Of course, wildlife. You know, in the wintertime, the wildlife come down out of the high country, and they're a lot more prevalent down in the valley. So we'll see moose, bison, coyotes, foxes, sheep, elk, a lot of different animals that we get to see, and they're all fairly close to the road. And so during the day, we'll make various loops through some of the wildlife hotspots and always be on the prowl for wildlife. And the way I usually go is I'll run one camera body with my wide angle setup, hopping out to shoot landscapes. But I'll also run a body with my telephoto lens on it. And I'll usually keep that in my lap or within very close reach, so we can capitalize on brief wildlife sightings. Just hop out of the car, bam, bam, bam. And sometimes you can capture some shots really quickly that you couldn't get if you had to get out and unpack your camera and set up your tripod. So sometimes our days are filled with very opportunistic shooting like that. Here's a couple of structures on the other side of the molten barns down along Mormon Row. Again, very gray and cloudy day. Light snow cover on the ground. This was a low snow year for us. Speaking of clouds, I loved the monochromatic background, and my goal with this shot was to isolate the tree against this very mundane background and really kind of create a desolate feeling. One of the barns along Mormon Row in a snowstorm. And this is one where, you know, I choose to try to get a little bit longer shutter speed so I can get snow streaks instead of bright dots of snowflakes. And so the snow had just really started coming down at this point. So I wanted to capture that snow falling in front of the barn. Wood. Oh, I love the wood. There's a lot of detail, texture, color. There's a lot of stories in this old wood on the side of these preserved barns. Here's a classic shot from the Snake River overlook. This was a beautiful bluebird day. Temperature had risen to maybe 5 degrees, if I remember right, on this day. But, you know, the thing with wintertime in the Tetons, you never know what the weather's going to be like. We could have a crystal clear blue day, or we could not see the mountains at all for the entire day. So the weather's very unpredictable when we visit the park in the winter. Sunrise along Mormon Row. This was a minus 15 degree day. You know, and with the right clothes, this kind of weather isn't bad. I mean, we stayed out for a couple of hours and nobody got too cold, and you know, with the right gear, it's not a bad experience being out this cold. So don't let the cold temperature scare you. The sun had just come up and it was illuminating the clouds in the background, which created these beautiful colors. And the Tetons is really a sunrise park. It's not a sunset park. The sun sets behind the mountains and you never truly get to see it unless there's some high clouds overhead. So just think sunrise when you come to the Tetons. Speaking of wildlife, real close to Jackson, there's an area where the bighorn sheep typically congregate. So we'll go out there a couple of times scouting for sheep. And on this particular day, I found a family. There's dad and the little baby peeking over the rocks. And then you can see down in the lower right, there's the other sheep, the other part of the family. I think that's mom. And they were all just kind of hanging out. And I shot this at about 300 millimeters. So they are not very far away from us. So bighorn sheep, if you've ever wanted to capture those, this is a great place to do that. Afternoon sunlight along the hillside. The thing in the wintertime, you know, with the sun being relatively low in the sky, you get some beautiful qualities of light. And this shot, I was really just trying to capture the beautiful light on the hillsides. Here's a coyote we found up near Jackson Lake one day. He was out hunting for voles and mice out in the fields. I never saw him jump up and stick his nose in the snow. Typically fox do that a little bit more. But we'll usually see a couple of coyote that we're able to photograph. Another sunrise from a different year along Mormon Row. Again, that pink color in the sky with the majestic Tetons behind the barns. It's a beautiful experience to see this in winter, and there's zero tourists. We'll maybe find some other photographers, but there's very few tourists compared to fall and summertime. Cool thing, there's in this particular shot, the Snake River is off there kind of at the base of the mountains, and this fog layer is kind of hanging out over the river. The temperature difference between the river and the surrounding air has created this fog layer, so I thought it created an interesting composition, how it bisected the mountains. Again, bighorn sheep. Here's a close-up, turned it monochrome. More of the beautiful red bushes. A little further up the north end of the park, we'll find some more open water that we can shoot in a more landscape type of format. I liked the S-curves of the water in this particular shot, and the contrasting textures and colors of the foliage behind it. Abstracts, you can shoot tons of abstracts in the park. This is a frozen piece of water that had different colors, white on the left and a dark blue, black on the right, that was sort of dotted with ice pellets on top. So I thought this was kind of a cool abstract. But we're there to see the mountains. And this is a particular mountain shot that I got just a couple of years ago that I love. This was late afternoon, lots of storm clouds, but the sun was peeking through various portions of the clouds. So I put on my 1:400, and I only shot this at about 150, almost 200 millimeter. But it created just this beautiful, dramatic shot of the mountains peeking out through the clouds. This is the kind of stuff that I enjoy shooting. Early one morning up by Oxbow Bend, we saw this guy running along the riverbank, and so I was lucky enough to have my 1:400 on. I shot this at 2,000ths of a second to make sure that I could stop the image and have a really sharp image of this coyote running along. Again, another barn from Mormon Row. This is kind of about the quality of light. There's a really warm golden light against the barns, and you can see a little bit of that light on the hill in the background. But quiet, picturesque scene with warm light. Up near Jackson Lake, here's the river that flows out of the lake, and oftentimes there'll be a low mist or a fog hanging on this lake, really a low mist, because the water temperature is different than the air temp. This was, I don't know, we were about 0 degrees when we shot this. You can see just little hints of mist off in the quieter pieces of the water, but this gives you an idea of what some of the landscape looks like nearby the lake. Again, moose. Beautiful warm light. Illuminated the grass in a nice golden way. And sometimes it's difficult. These moose are so dark that to get the right exposure so you're not blocked out in the shadows of the moose or overexposed on the landscape around, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky, but that's one of those things that we'll help you with on this workshop. Monochrome, shadows, textures. In wintertime, I love shooting monochrome. There's a lot to do in the monochrome space. I love the trees. There's some great birch trees, cottonwood trees up there, and the tree trunks are something that I really enjoy shooting. This is three trees standing out. This is up near Jackson Lake. And then deeper into that forest, I found this wonderful little intimate nature shot of a split tree trunk with some snow built up around it and some lichen off to the side. You can get all sorts of shots like this. Buffalo, we happened to be driving down the highway and saw this guy cross the road, and so we pulled over as fast as we can and ran back up and stalked him and got this great kind of side-on shot of him with snow on the back. Lots of chance to shoot buffalo or bison up there. Remember how I mentioned it's not really a sunset park? This is sunset. I was able to catch some of the sun's glow on the peak, but as you can see, there's nothing in the sky. And so at sunset, it's a little bit more challenging to find the right shots that you want, or traditional landscape shots, if you will. Off of Kelly Loop Road, kind of up in the hills, we'll venture up there and explore that area. And this is an old homestead up kind of east of the mountain range. And this is where they shot the part of the film Shane, for those of you that are old enough to remember that movie. But this is a fun area to come up and explore and shoot, especially when it's snow covered. This was a really low snow year, but we were still up there and were able to create some nice images in that area. This is somebody out of our group. We'll visit this area. It's a hot spring area. There's some thermal activity in the park, and this is a hot spring area, and he was off shooting, I think, some abstracts, and I really liked the way he was silhouetted against the steam in the background with that golden light. Sunrise from Oxbow Bend. We'll spend a morning or two up in Oxbow. And the beautiful thing about wintertime in the Tetons, or wintertime anywhere, is that the days are shorter, so you're not up at dark 30 to drive the half an hour to 45 minutes up to Oxbow Bend. But we got some beautiful, beautiful color in the sky with the frozen river in the foreground, and that fog bank over the lake added some mystery and drama to the image. Speaking of mystery, drama, and environmental conditions, we were shooting towards Mount Moran behind this shot. Then all of a sudden I turned around and I see this wispy fog going through the landscape, and I see this beautiful flip of fog coming up. Golden light in the morning, low angle of the sun. So there's lots of cool things to capture in this park. Again, more drama. Lots of monochrome. Again, a close up. This was shot at 98 millimeters, so it wasn't very far away. I was able to zoom in and kind of capture the power of the storm clouds and the dramaticness of the peaks. More wildlife. We found this fox a few years ago and spent about an hour shooting it. And at one point it went off into the trees, and I followed. And I caught this great shot of him with the trees surrounding him. Some might think there's a little bit too much mess of trees, but I personally kind of like it because it feels like you're in the trees with the fox, and he's looking right at the camera. So this is one of my favorite fox shots from Grand Teton. Cold morning along Mormon Row. Just after sunrise, or just right at sunrise. There's some high clouds that haven't illuminated yet. Enough light in the landscape, fog in the distance. But we'll visit this area 2 or 3 times at least during our workshop. When I mentioned about exploring further east, up in the hills, this is one of the shots that we like to come up and take a look at. There's a horse pasture down below, the valley, and then the mountains rising off in the distance. So it can be a really picturesque, beautiful landscape. Moose. We saw these moose. We were driving along Kelly Loop Road off in the distance, and we saw some moose gathered near an access road. And so we went down a little bit of four-wheeling down this road, and these guys were, 20 yards off the road, and they hung out together for a long time, and we were able to capture a lot of shots of them interacting with one another. This happens to be one of my favorite, with our horns interlocked in their noses side by side. One of my faves. And then lastly, there's lots of panorama opportunities. This happens to be a relatively beautiful day. I think the temperature had risen to 20, maybe 30 degrees. We were driving along the highway and decided to pull off at one of the numerous overlooks and just capture a classic shot of the Tetons. So that's a little bit of what you can expect to see and to shoot when you come with us to Grand Teton National Park during the winter. So I hope you have enjoyed this. I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions about what this workshop's about. Otherwise, you can check me out at johnpetersonphoto.com and sign up for the workshops there. Have a great day, folks. Thanks for watching.